the studio, and I was just informed I said Friday instead of Monday, but it is Monday. Maybe it's because it's Monday that I said Friday. Anyway, welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Avan. It's great to be here.
So what do we have this morning?
So just wanted to bring a couple of updates, and then hopefully we'll get the phones ringing as this is a call-in show to be able to let the callers direct us for the conversation. But happy spring, first and foremost. Of course, over the weekend we were able to spring forward, and so I think we're all a little sleep deprived as it relates to that. But so lots is continuing to happen here on campus. Of course, with the spring season brings lots of outdoor festivity and work that's coming about. So you may have noticed last week, Brickman, the landscape contractor, was out putting out mulch and touching up some of the flower beds as well. So it's nice to start seeing some buds on the tree, which hopefully mean that the cold temperatures are behind us now. One of the things, as you know, that we monitored all winter long was the extent of our pipes as it relates to exposure to outdoor freezing temperatures.
Did we get through this winter all right?
We got through this not only all right, we got through this winter without a single incident, which is great. And lots of efforts behind the scenes to ensure that did not occur, some of which involves obviously insulating some of the areas that were identified following the last incidents where we needed to perform some additional insulation. So that project will continue. In fact, they're on their 4th residential building now at Oak Hill. It's where the insulation team is stationed and continuing to do work. And through the spring and probably even into the beginning of the summer, they'll continue with that effort as we go. So hopefully for next winter, we're well protected, and we can all have great peace of mind in knowing that we can stay warm and dry indoors as well.
I'm sure those who've had their apartments affected are a little relieved to hear that.
I hope so. You know, the team, and kudos to the maintenance and engineering team behind the scenes. Anytime we had sustained cold temperatures that were going to be freezing and below, we had to continue to monitor those weather patterns, but also take some additional actions through some temperature monitoring around the clock. So literally staff members using an infrared thermometer to be able to take the temperatures of some pipes, you know, throughout the course of the days, evenings, and nights. So their proactivity really helped to avert any instances this year, which was fantastic.
That's great.
So with the spring, of course, last week we had a St. Patty's celebration downstairs in the Akatank room, and it was fun with full of Irish music, and we had some Irish step dancers that were there to provide some entertainment for everyone. Of course, St. Patty's is upcoming this week on the 17th.
That's right.
So look for a little bit more fun. The marketing event this week is also themed along those lines, so it feels like it's maybe a week-long St. Patty's celebration.
Well, this is the Ides of March.
There it is. Yes, indeed. The Ides of March it is. So lots of fun, I think, heading onward for that day. So I know that the dining team has an Irish-themed meal queued up for the 17th as well. So that was some fun. I wanted to address television as a subject area, just because I know that there's been a lot of conversations out there in the community over the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to just try the very best to make it simple, though it's not a very simple issue, unfortunately. So
okay, let's make sure everybody has this phone number, 703-923-4639. That's for your call-ins.
So as it relates to the television, let's go back a year ago. A year ago, as conversations were being held at Green Spring about the coming of DirecTV moving into the community, and most of those conversations predated my arrival even to the campus. And so in fact, the week that I arrived was the week that installations were beginning, and so we were kind of catching up to communications and some other things that I wanted to move further along with to try to make this as painless as possible. Despite some of those efforts, obviously, we knew that there were some opportunities to better communicate, but in addition to that, I think what we found is what may be perceived by some as a very easy transition from one television system to the next is riddled with complexity as it relates to to our average users, being the residents, as well as then the technology components behind the scenes, whether it's television channel lineups, whether it's getting to know a new remote control, whether it's accessing various inputs of the TV, lots of complexities that turned normal TV watching from a very simple activity to one that's a little bit more complex than that. So, so going back now to the current time, just a couple of weeks ago, we were previously running two different cable systems, AEI-TV, which was the former provider, and DirecTV. And the reason why we were running two was that we wanted everybody to have the opportunity to convert to the new DirecTV system. As we'd communicated before, DirecTV was going to be the television provider moving forward. So, so it came to the time where most every resident had taken action to install DirecTV, and in fact I wrote a letter last June to residents. In fact, there were about 150 residents that had not set up DirecTV accounts, and wrote them a letter. It was a certified letter that basically stated, if you don't take any action, you will lose your television service. So, so take action now to avoid that. And in fact, we continued with AEI-TV for an additional 8 months beyond that date to ensure that people had plenty of opportunity to be able to make that conversion. So a couple of weeks ago, we elected, and what happened when some of the most recent television concerns surfaced was we were turning off the AEI-TV television signal, if you will.
Okay.
And so, so that's where some of this complexity entered in. Bottom line is, residents that had already converted over to DirecTV and were normally viewing DirecTV had no issue whatsoever. The DirecTV was completely unaffected by that. In fact, continues today to be able to stream as normal. So folks that were accustomed to watching the AEI-TV side were affected and have been affected with that. So as volumes of calls came into our general services office, we were able to troubleshoot what was causing the issue, and the overwhelming majority were folks that maybe were under the impression that they were watching DirecTV. In fact, they were not. They were watching the old AEI-TV. So as that signal was cut off, people then all of a sudden lost their TV service. So, so since that time, there are some efforts to do what we call rescanning channels, and that is only applicable to people that are watching the non-DirecTV aspect of the television. So folks that might be on the alternate input to watch our show this morning, channels 2, 6, and 8, the Green Spring channels, that input section, in order to have additional stations above 2, 6, and 8, require televisions to be rescanned. And this rescanning process is a result of the government's decision back in 2009 to move away from broadcasting television channels from an analog signal to a digital signal.
Okay.
So I had actually brought the flyer with me from June of 2009 that was routed to Fairfax County residents, and it says, "The digital television transition is coming soon, and it is easy to be prepared. June 12, 2009 is the last day major broadcast stations will transmit analog television signals." So the call to action at that time, and again, this is not a Green Spring phenomenon, this was a phenomenon for the country, was to either get a converter box that would be able to catch these old signals and convert them, or potentially risk not being able to view television any longer. So in 2009, that date has come and gone, and so our impression is that ship has sailed 7 years ago before getting to the point where our television signal was being cut off. So at the point where AEI-TV was turned off, residents that had not taken any action on that, unfortunately, are now sprouting up that might have some older televisions that are unable to now catch some of these TV signals. In typical Green Spring fashion, we really wanted to go above and beyond to try to help. That we've deployed a number of resident volunteers, as well as a number of staff members, as well as DirecTV, to try to help troubleshoot some of these apartments. the numbers are in excess of more than 200 residents that were affected originally.
Oh dear.
So, so we went apartment by apartment to try to help residents to be able to view their television as normal. Through that, it became very quickly apparent to me. In fact, I've been in 34 apartment homes as of this time, and in all 34 of those apartment homes, the DirecTV was working as it was set up to work perfectly, yet the over-the-air channels needed to be either rescanned or were simply, I informed some residents to say, your television is a lot older than 2009, and so it may not be able to catch those signals any longer. So that's kind of where this issue began, and today there are still efforts being made to try to help residents convert. The primary effort is if we change the input on their television to the DirecTV station, from there they can continue to watch all of the DirecTV lineup as they were before any of this began. So, so that's primary effort number one, and the secondary component to this is some residents, may choose to buy a different TV if they have the old tube-style televisions.
Right.
That very well may be their desire as well. So we're here to help, but I also want to make sure that people, underscore the fact that our primary effort is to continue with the DirecTV service.
Sure.
And if there are troubleshooting on anything else aside from that, we'd like to help, but frankly, our primary effort is to make sure that DirecTV is in place, and that is the functional offering of television service at Green Spring.
Okay.
So, so I'm not sure if you have any specific questions beyond that, or if you're hearing of any other issues, from residents. That's my way of trying to keep it simple, but at the same stage, I understand that it's very confusing.
But now to get the in-house channels, we still have to do that switch over to the, the TV
That's right.
type thing.
Yeah. So channels 2, 6, and 8 are still being broadcast in the analog signal. And so, so that will continue right now until further notice. So folks are able to watch those by simply changing their input from DirecTV to the alternate input device. What makes it confusing, Avan, is that every resident's television is a little bit different. And their input might be set up on a different input device.
Right.
So I'd love to be able to provide specific instructions to residents on how to do that, but it's customized to every individual apartment home.
So anybody who goes in to help really has to spend some time learning what kind of system they have.
That's right. And in fact, one residence apartment I've been to 3 times, and every time we get it to the right zone, and unfortunately some way in which she's maneuvering will end up on the wrong input device. And in her perception, the TV has stopped working. It's just simply a user error, unfortunately. And so this is a complex thing. I want to underscore that. We're happy to help, but at the same token, we really want people to try to keep it on the input device. Those users that are adept enough to be able to switch to watch 2, 6, and 8, great, that's fantastic. But those that are not, let's spare ourselves the complexity. Yeah, because the other television sources are...
Come to the lobby to watch it.
There you go.
Get out in the public and watch it. Okay. We don't have any calls yet. Now we're sitting here waiting for calls, and Ben is here for this half hour just to answer your questions. So if you have questions, be sure to bring them up. But we don't have any calls yet.
Well, that's all right. So a couple of other points to address this morning are we of course hosted our resident feedback forums back in February.
Yes.
And those feedback forums were intended to collect information. Great.
Okay, welcome. You're on Channel 6.
Hi, Ben. When do you think we'll be able to hang up our first art wall? The new one.
Thank you for the call, Lloyd. Mr. Len is one of our avid resident artists, which, as you know, what he's referencing is the resident art wall over in Hunter's Crossing. So the art wall, as you may be aware, is moving over to Hunter's Crossing to be in a more prominent position, which will be a really nice public display of the many talents that our residents have. So right now what you see is a blank canvas, and the wall has been prepared to be able to hang that, and the actual fixtures that there's a cabling system that will allow for each piece of artwork to be displayed.
And where is it to be
moved.
in Hunter's Crossing?
It's directly across from the front desk.
Wonderful.
So in between, there's two niche areas on either side of the art wall, and those will continue to display some 3D artwork pieces.
Oh, wonderful.
But then also in the middle, that blank canvas, that large wall, will have many other,
I think we
features.
have another call coming in. Did I get a signal we had another call coming in? Okay.
So, Mr. Lynn, the date on that is to be determined based on when these fasteners come in.
Welcome. You're on Channel 6.
Hello?
Yes.
My name is Ergastukian, and I have a minor problem. The trash at night is supposed to be put out at 8 o'clock to be picked up. It so happens I like to be in bed much earlier than that. So could we lower the time at night to put the trash out?
Okay, that's a good question.
Thank
I
you for
know
the call.
a lot of people have that problem.
So, good news is that we're in the process of revising the resident handbook for publication as we speak. So, in fact, I've turned over a draft version of the handbook to our communications committee, which is a group of residents here in the community, one of the subcommittees of our resident council, to evaluate kind of the content of the handbook and make sure that it's clear from a resident's perspective. So they're helping to revise many components of that, but one of those revisions that we made was changing that time. Now there's a balancing act with this. We want it to be a little bit earlier, but we also want to make sure that both from the unpleasant odor, if you will, but also the safe travel to and from the restaurant or the dining experience doesn't impede walkers coming down the hallway to encounter trash that's out and about. So I believe, and don't quote me at this, but I believe that the handbook revision is going to be an hour earlier at the 7 o'clock hour, which will
maybe if it's
make that
under the
accommodation.
shelf or something like that rather than out in the hallway.
That's right. So for now, continue with the practice just as it is, and the handbook will provide a potential revision to that time frame, which will be communicated in writing to all residents.
Of course,
So
if you're up
stay
before
tuned.
6 o'clock, you can put it out in the morning.
Sure.
If you're an early riser.
That's right.
I know a few people who do that, who get up at 5 and put their trash out.
Boy, I'm jealous if people are able to get to bed early and then sleep late. So hopefully the early the folks getting to bed earlier are those early risers.
The early
that can
risers,
do just as you
yes,
said. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So that could take care of that as long as they get it out before they pick up.
Sure.
Okay.
I was getting ready to address the resident feedback forums,
Yes.
and that's the resident handbook is one example of something that's coming out of the resident feedback forums, was to publish kind of the new guidelines, if you will, for the community.
Okay,
that
we have another
we'll
call
bring some
coming
updates
in.
with that. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's take that call. We have a call coming in. There we go. You're on Channel 6. Alice?
Hello?
Yes, turn your
I want to talk about the program.
Turn
the
your
Irish program.
Alice, turn your TV off.
Okay.
Okay. What is it about the Alice the program? She cut herself off. Yeah, she cut herself off.
Well, Alice, hopefully you call us back.
Something
Sounds
about
like she
the
wanted
Irish
to
program.
make a comment about the Irish program. Well, it was fun. Nonetheless, I was only there for the beginning of it, but it was well attended, and
Good.
people seemed to really be enjoying themselves with some light snacks and good entertainment. So
I
it
was sorry
it
I
quite
was
festive.
off campus at that time, so I didn't get to go. But yeah, Alice, call us back. Okay. All right, go on now with the forums.
So with the feedback forums, we're hoping to be able to, to provide some clarity as far as what areas of priority are we working on from each community or each committee's perspective. So look for that in the next, week or 2 weeks for us to be able to publish kind of a list of here are the key priorities that each committee is working on as part of that. So more to come in that manner, but quite a lot of feedback comes back from that, and that's one way I've heard a lot about in the last year that I'm here, that we don't seek resident input enough on key decisions.
Think a lot of residents feel like they don't have a voice.
Right.
But, I think maybe they don't understand the chain of communication as well as they should.
So those feedback forums are an opportunity for that voice, loud and clear. And then the working committees are also residents, right? And so that's also resident voice that's interwoven into each of those areas as well.
And I think those are posted on the bulletin board, aren't they?
Indeed they are. Indeed they are.
So if you have something you want to talk about and have a beef about something or just a comment about something, check the bulletin board and see what committee chair to contact and get your voice heard.
Yeah.
So
I think we're doing a pretty good job these days of soliciting that feedback and then taking action on it. So hopefully we'll see that improve.
Okay. Yes, you're on TV.
Yes, I like to ask. Sometimes we like to go to Village Square for events, but sometimes the buses only run back at 9 o'clock, and sometimes the events run a little later. The buses run a little longer?
Are you talking about 9 p.m. or 9 a.m.?
9 p.m.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the call.
We'll talk about it here.
So as it relates to the bus schedule, as you know, is pretty fixed. However, if there's a special event that is taking place on campus that you would like to see an extension of services for that particular event, contact the General Services Transportation Office, and they're happy to work with you to the extent they can to make accommodations as necessary.
I hear sometimes about a movie that maybe is a little longer, and people will rush to try to get that last bus out.
Yeah.
So
if you communicate that in advance, now I would hesitate to permanently extend those services all the time, just simply that most often if we look at the ridership, especially in the evening hours, there's very little ridership that's ever occurring, and so it would not be a wise cost factor to have somebody there stationed with nobody else to drive around on campus. But for those particular events, Derek and his team have been very good at accommodating
so perhaps
those.
the ones who are sponsoring those events need to be aware of that and check and make sure the bus is like 9:15 or something like that.
Sure, and I know from past experience that they're happy to make those accommodations where they can.
Good. Well, that's good. So those who are doing the events, take heed.
Sure.
Okay. Now, anything else on the forums?
So
keep getting interrupted here, but that's great. That's what this.
Well, maybe we start talking about it, and it makes the phone ring again.
Yeah,
so
that's what this
a good
show's
thing.
for.
But with the feedback forums.
Here we go. You're on TV.
Yes, I had a question. Is there a time frame for Christmas decorations to be removed from the grounds?
Okay, that's a question we'll answer.
It's a great question to answer in March. A time frame for Christmas decorations to be removed. We typically are striving for those to be pulled down very early in January to allow for the holiday to have been celebrated. And these just aren't Christmas decorations. These would be any holiday decorations for those winter holidays. And as you know, some of those we tackle. Some of those we're dependent on contractors to tackle. So we do our best to make that happen.
I didn't check this
early
Sunday,
in the
but
year.
there has been a wreath up at the at the chapel that had been overlooked
Okay.
for a long time. I don't know whether it was down or not. It had turned brown.
Yeah. Well, let's bring that to somebody's
Outside,
attention, if you wouldn't mind, the specific location of it, so that that could be removed. But yeah, early on, and certainly at this point in March, there should be no,
Should be no
winter
Christmas.
holiday decorations
Right,
out and about.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Now, where were we?
So on the feedback forum, just note that that there's a lot of hard work that the committees are putting in to digest the feedback, to prioritize the feedback, and then work with the management counterpart at executing some change in those areas. So we just appreciate those people that did come out. They were a little lighter attended than I would like to see, but in general, there's very good feedback that rolls through those sessions. So
I
we
might
appreciate
mention
that.
also that if you have a strong feeling about a particular phase of your life here, look up the committee and maybe volunteer to serve on it.
That's right.
I mean, that's one way of getting your voice in there.
That's right. And my hope is that all of the volunteers are, not just necessarily working a personal agenda or their own individual viewpoint, but they're representing the views of their neighbors as well, fellow neighbors too. So perhaps those views overlap, which is a great thing.
Sometimes when you
Really.
get your own personal thing going, you realize, oh, that's kind of narrow. Maybe I'd better broaden it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but things at Green Spring continue to move along in a really good direction. I'm excited for the spring to be here, and excited to continue to enjoy the beauty of the campus this time of year, and really excited to see some of the new programs and initiatives taking
I
taking
noticed
foothold
the
here on campus too.
forsythia are just about ready to break loose
Yeah.
along the parking garages here.
Right.
Right.
And I saw a few of the annuals starting to sprout up from the ground as well.
Right,
So I'm sure
right.
before too long we'll begin seeing some
And
of
I
those.
hear people who are gardeners talking about getting things ready to plant, and they have their little seedlings all ready to go. And
The stage is set, that's for sure.
that's right. They're all waiting for that last freeze to get out of the way.
Indeed, indeed.
So that'll be wonderful. We still have about a minute, but
Okay.
if you have any last minute things, or anybody has a call for a last minute gasp, we still have a minute. So,
Well, it's always a pleasure to come on and have a chance to connect with you and be able to hear what's on the minds of residents in the community. So
Right.
always appreciate the opportunity for these call-in shows to be able to
Good.
address questions right off the cuff, or look into things.
Sure.
That
now if people are still having trouble with their TV, where are they to call?
So if folks are having difficulty with their television, General Services is the primary point of contact.
Okay.
What I would underscore is our primary effort is on the DirecTV side.
Right.
If after attempts on this alternate input device, if over-the-air channels are not viewable, what have you, we're not going to be entertaining that aspect of television for
right.
much longer. So we're trying to help
and if
people
they
with
have
the initial phase.
have a television that is pre-2009, they may have to think about getting a new one.
Most likely, if it's pre-2009, they will have to get a new one. If not, get a digital converter box
Right.
associated with that.
Right.
The majority of it, I would emphasize, utilize the DirecTV, and any other television watching that's desired above and beyond that is icing on the cake.
Okay, very good.